If there's one breakout star of COVID-19 and the great human experience of staying home for prolonged periods, it is food. Let's find out how the whole space of food is being disrupted. Please welcome Jordan Foord, Acting CEO.
Hi, my name is Jordan, and today we're going to be talking about everything food and beverage. But specifically, we're going to talk about how the industry responded to COVID-19 using both new and existing technologies. The COVID-19 pandemic has been largely destructive for the global food and beverage industry, not only from the direct impact of government closures of venues, but also the ongoing effect of physical distancing, things like venue capacity limits, server restrictions, and the constantly changing operating hours. This did result in a number of changes that hit hard for food lovers. Closed restaurants, and in some cases permanently, small dining groups when you're eating out, and much smaller dinner parties when you're cooking at home. But the changes weren't all bad. Next slide. Today we're going to look at 3 areas where the pandemic has actually created some new value and increased the opportunities for engagement between food consumers, creators, and producers, starting with how restaurants adapted, experimented, and innovated, and continue to do so while the pandemic remains active. Next slide. So in Copenhagen, NOMA, arguably the world's best restaurant, closed its doors during the pandemic for 2 months. And they took some time to look at what they'd done before, as well as what their audience were doing, and decided to try an experiment by reopening as a casual garden eatery, serving cheeseburgers, natural ones at picnic tables. Next slide. So the experiment was a success. They sold 1,200 burgers by 6 p.m. on their very first day at 30 Singapore dollars each, which is about 1/18 of the price of their seafood menu that they sold in March prior to lockdown. This might not necessarily be the future of the restaurant though. When the founder, Rene, was asked if this is the next era of NOMA, he responded that for now, they'll be serving up the best goddamn cheeseburger his chefs could conjure up, accompanied with juicy, accessible natural wines, or burger wines, as they like to call them. Next slide. So when the pandemic hit, along with the quickly mandated lockdowns, operators were looking for ways to shift excess product they might have had on hand. You might have already seen some items like milk and other staples added to the bottom of some home delivery menus around this period. What followed for some venues, however, was a full pivot into home delivery grocery services. And it makes sense. So professional chefs excel at knowing not only how to cook, but also what to cook and where to get the best ingredients. They have storage. In most cases, they have access to a delivery network, and they have a community of established diners as potential new customers. Next. In Singapore, a number of restaurants have launched online grocery stores. So Market by the Superloco Group, obviously not able to seat people in their dining rooms across the island. They started selling fresh produce, meat, and ready-to-cook Mexican food. Blue Cuisina, a Mediterranean favorite in Singapore as well, it launched an online store with over 700 products. And French restaurant Atu, they opened up a store offering some of the most impressive-looking butters and terrines accessible on the island. Even Woolloomooloo Steakhouse started selling pre-marinated steaks to cook on the barbecue at home. So next, delivery went gourmet. Another interesting change was the shift to delivery from more high-end restaurants. Around half of Asia's top 50 restaurants started offering home delivery during the pandemic, and through some trial, error, and creativity, introduced us to a new type of home delivery experience. Next slide. Odette, which this year was announced as Asia's best restaurant via a Zoom ceremony online, it's worth mentioning, launched Odette at Home, arguably one of the world's most premium home delivery experiences, where customers are delivered their favorite restaurant dishes only partially assembled with finishing instructions. And they rewarded customers who shared photos of their final plated meals online. Also in Singapore, we saw the launch of the dine-in movement, an alliance of some of the island's most well-regarded dining establishments drive their own discovery function, encouraging more of these gourmet delivery experiences in our homes outside of the traditional incumbent delivery app ecosystems. So the second thing is about how chefs use technology to reach more diners. So prior to the pandemic, chefs used social media much like the rest of us. So they used it to share photos of food or what they got up to on the weekend. What's changed is that they've taken advantage of an opportunity to connect with their diners while they were stuck at home. And these diners were most likely struggling with their fifth failed sourdough starter or some other desperate attempt at professional food to break the boredom of lockdown. So Kiwi chef, well, a couple of examples. Kiwi chef Josh Emmett, and he's behind some of New Zealand's favourite restaurants, including Rata, Madame Wu and Ostro, decided to demo some of his most popular dishes as well as some home staples. Next. So David Chang, who you've probably heard of, he's a creator of the groundbreaking Momofuku chain. He taught us how to make some of the home-style meals he eats rather than the complicated culinary masterpieces he's become known for, as well as some impromptu reviews of kitchen tools he's purchased online, as well as some slow-mo replays of his own mishaps. So everyone makes mistakes. In Australia, Matt Moran took it one step further, and he partnered with a local greengrocer chain to create the Cook at Home with Matt Moran experience, where home chefs ordered a box of ingredients, and then on a Friday night, they'd live stream an interactive cooking class with Matt himself from his own home kitchen. Next.
Wow, really fantastic. That's noise coming.
Even Italy's 84-year-old Nonna Narina was hosting a virtual cooking classes from her home in the countryside just outside of Rome, teaching her ways to make classics like fettuccine and ravioli with butter sage sauce to people all over the world. Next. So lastly, we're going to look at how restaurant tech rose to the challenge. The restaurant technology industry watched and reacted to these changing conditions, and were generally very quick to introduce new or updated features to better support the changing needs of venues. We saw mobile phones shift from an antisocial dining distraction to an essential tool required to view a menu, order a meal, and pay your bill. Venues adopted and integrated pickup and delivery services into their daily operations at great speed, and in many cases were able to continue operations despite closures or heavy restrictions. We saw the global reservation technology providers respond quickly as restaurants closed, and then reopen with varying restrictions in place. So by mid-March, US-based TOC and SEVENROOMS had launched takeaway functionality, with the TOC team pricing at just 3%, after seeing an industry suddenly dependent on pickup and delivery, but reeling from the sometimes 30% commissions charged by the major category players. TOC didn't include the delivery function, but they had the expectation that people would come for pickup. And those who wouldn't, they figured restaurants could dispatch otherwise out-of-work waitstaff to deliver the orders. In April and May, as Southeast Asia, the UK and Europe went into various versions of lockdown and circuit breakers, companies like Chope, Resdiary and ZenChef all released their own pickup and delivery solutions, with Resdiary also releasing an in-venue order and pay solution the day before UK restaurants were allowed to reopen their doors with new server restrictions in place. OPENTABLE, on the other hand, approached it in a different way. They actually broadened their addressable categories, so they started launching support for things like grocery stores, wineries, bars, and college dining rooms. In Southeast Asia, a number of the existing products in the space saw their opportunity to grow, while a number of others entered the market after being first established in other categories. In Singapore alone, we've seen new or modified offerings like YQ, Buy For You, Deliver.sg, even property developer Capitaland launched Capita Treats, which delivers food from eateries in its malls. While established players like Oddle and Butlerick launched consumer discovery tools, Oddle Eats and B28. Singapore's revenue in the online food delivery segment is now expected to reach around $650 million this year. And meanwhile, TabSquare, Waiter, and many other existing in-venue payment solutions have seen their gross merchandise value grow up to 5 times during this period. Now, there are a few other movements and signals we're seeing in the F&B tech market that indicate a strategic shift, likely driven by the state of the industry. Now, this isn't exhaustive, but these are some of the big ones. So Just Eat, of course, they acquired Grubhub for about $7.3 billion, creating a combined operation that will have 70 million customers globally. SEVENROOMS received another $50 million in funding and made some new hires for expansion in the Asia Pacific region. And then OPENTABLE got a new CEO and made some significant changes to their global workforce. Next. So what does the future hold? While trying to plan anything further than 6 months out is extremely challenging given the current global situation, for me, I think we'll see three key trends continue in the digital food and beverage space. Adaptation. So to continue to have success in this environment, F&B tech companies will need to keep quickly addressing new needs as they're identified amongst their existing customer segments, just as restaurants will need to continue to monitor and adapt to the changing guidelines put in place to slow down the spread of COVID-19. Growth. We're already starting to see different rates of recovery across markets. So companies will start looking for new geographic regions, different customer segments, and product features to grow or at least maintain their revenue. And finally, right sizing. So this is happening everywhere, but now's the time it makes the most sense to make the required changes to ensure businesses are operating in the most cost-efficient way possible. But they're also set up in a way that supports short-term tactical activities while also continuing to build value that will pay off in the long term. And that's all from me. Thanks so much for your time.